And welcome Matt Dillahunty. Matt is the president of the atheist community of Austine and well known as the host of the live call-in TV program, The Atheist Experience. He's a fantastic voice of reason, does informal debates, formal debates, travels across the country speaking as one of the SSA Speakers Bureau speakers, and he describes it as, this is what happens when you take a fundamentalist Christian for 25 years and you try to become a minister and it backfires. And you get Matt. Let's welcome him.
I'm not used to speaking in front of people, and that was actually a problem of mine. I'm not going to go through my whole history. I don't know what you guys came here expecting. We're not doing a live TV show. I am branching out from the things that I normally talk about. First, let me thank everybody for coming and for the SSA for having me. You guys are my favorite people. I do a lot of talks. This is the one that's important, which is why I'm going to fuck it up really bad. One of the things, I'm going to do this a bit different. I'm going to move around, first of all, and I don't have slides. There's nothing fancy. It's just me. And I want to start with a story because it'll give you kind of a look into the way I think. And I think a lot, and I talk to myself a lot. As a matter of fact, in order to kind of rehearse the talks that I'm giving, I will set my phone up in the car. I have a 40-minute drive. I set the phone up, I set it to videotape and just ignore it, and then I talk to myself out loud, and that's how I take notes for talks. And then I never look at them, because once you've said it out loud, it's okay. I get a ton of email. I can't possibly answer it all. I think if you looked at my Gmail inbox today, it's 1,300 or 1,400 emails behind, and that's after archiving about 4,000 of them 2 months ago. And I missed some important emails related to this conference. But I got an email not too long ago, and it said, hey, Matt, and all the folks at the Atheist Experience crew, which, by the way, give them all credit, because I'm not the only one that works there. Those guys are amazing. Secret to doing things right, surround yourself with a bunch of really smart people. Those folks are amazing, and the people that you don't see are also amazing. But it said, hey, we love the show, or I love the show. It's amazing to me. I agree with you guys on almost everything. But on this subject, you are spectacularly wrong. I don't even understand how somebody as intelligent and skeptical and critically thinking minded as you are could possibly get this wrong. And you talk to people about it on the show, and it's just baffling to me. I'm a big fan and very disappointed. And I respond with, well, I understand you think I'm wrong. Thanks for telling me that you think I'm wrong. Would you mind telling me why you think I'm wrong? Because that's the why is what I care about anyway. And the response, there's a back and forth that basically begins with, here's why I think you're wrong, and I respond with, there's a fallacy here, and I don't agree with this, and I think you've misdefined something here, and we go back and forth. And to make the long story short, at the end of this, the response is, well, I've talked to all of my smartest friends, and they agree with me, and you're an asshole, and you are a liar, and you are not a skeptic, you're not a critical thinker. You are a closed-minded fundamentalist, just like the people you oppose, and I'm done watching your show. And my response is, good riddance. But before you'll notice I didn't mention what the subject of that email was. What was it I was wrong about? And that's because I didn't just get this email last week. I get it all the time on every subject you can possibly imagine. I am wrong. I am wrong about sexism, women's rights, gay rights, men's rights, circumcision, homeopathy, 9/11, Masons. You pick anything, whatever somebody's pet issue is that they're still, or that we differ on. I'm the one that's wrong, and maybe I am. I'm not going to change my mind until there's actually a good reason for me to change my mind. I fully admit I'm probably wrong on a lot of things. But I don't just say, oh, you disagree with me, and you're going to stop watching the show, so, okay. I agree now. Thanks so much. Doesn't work that way. I want to tell you about another email that actually came in, and this is pretty much a one of. How many people are familiar with Tracy Harris, who is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met? She's on our show. If you're going to the Atheist Alliance America convention in Denver, all of the godless bitches will be there to do a live podcast. And if there's time at the end of this, I'm going to call Beth on the phone and let you all yell hi at her if she answers. But Tracy gets a lot of good fan mail, and we got an email recently that said, "Is Tracy Harris single?" I forgot to start my time. Is Tracy Harris single? Because I've been single for so long because I didn't know there were women like this out there. I really, really, really love you, Tracy. And I replied, because Tracy was busy, I wasn't jumping in, but I was like, is this really the first communication you have with somebody? In what bizarro universe would your first conversation with somebody be, "Hey, are you single? Because I've been single forever because I didn't know you was out there. I love you." And Tracy eventually replied, because she's like, "I know exactly what bizarro universe in there. I did it when I was a 12-year-old girl, with the people who I had posters up on there. Oh, I love them," and blah, 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 and that's communication. What do these two emails have in common? The title of the talk that I'm giving today is Unsafe Assumptions. And that's what they have in common. We think we're right. We always think we're right. If we thought we were wrong, we'd change our minds, right? So obviously we're right. And we tend to think that we came to these conclusions that we have for really good reasons. And so we also happen to love ourselves quite a bit. And as a big, humongous ball of stage-honking ego up here, I'm not exempt. I'm right all the time. Until somebody proves otherwise, in which case I'm very, very happy that I'm no longer wrong. But we assume that we're right, and we love ourselves, and so when we encounter somebody else who agrees with us on A, B, or C, their stock just goes through the roof immediately, even if we know nothing else about them. They're just like us. And clearly they're going to agree with us on X, Y, and Z, won't they? If I know what I'm talking about, and I'm talking to you, and you're clearly smart because you agreed with me on this, then clearly you know what I'm talking about, right? If this wouldn't offend me, and you're just like me, clearly this shouldn't offend you. If this is the way I want to be treated, and you're just like me, clearly this is the way you want to be treated. These are the assumptions we make that poison all communications. It's the reason, I think, why we have so many issues, not just externally with perhaps religious groups, but internally in our discussions about the little things and big things that can divide the secular movement. Whether we have a disagreement about harassment policies or sexism or its prevalence or anything else, a lot of times we bring our baggage with us. Our assumptions inform the type of arguments that we're going to make, what we're going to accept, and what we think. And this assumption that you're like me is something we do because it feels right. We live our lives primarily by inference and induction. We'd love to think that we are the rational heroes of the planet, that we are deductive reasoning savants who have systematically and seriously considered everything that we believe, and that's why we're right. In actuality, we live our lives by inference and induction. Today is pretty much the same as it was yesterday, and the things that were true yesterday are most likely going to be true today. And so when I'm presented, or any of us are presented, with a proposition, what happens? Well, we'd like to think that our brain says, hey, here's a proposition. Let me go through this heuristic model here and assess it. And I'm going to first compare this. Well, first thing I'm going to do is say, do I already believe this proposition? Because if the answer is yes, I'm done thinking. And not only is that a bad thing because you stop thinking, but this happens over and over again. If the answer is yes, it doesn't just stop there. It's like this idea gets an extra tick mark in the right column. And so the more often you are told the thing that you already believe, the stronger you believe it. That's not an accumulation of evidence. That's an accumulation of ignorance. Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Wow, and you do too? Oh, I must really be right. But if we make it past the first step, and actually consider the question, and we say, okay, I don't agree with this, or I'm not sure what I think about this. So we compare the claim to what we already accept about reality, and is this consistent with it? And if it is, then we're good. And if it's not, then we look a little further, and we dig down, and we evaluate all these different things about, what do I know about the individual that's telling me this? Are they generally truthful? How much of my worldview am I going to have to alter if I accept that this is true? That's one of the biggest ones, because that involves work. We don't like work. That's a terrible, terrible thing. We'd like to think that we do this, and to some extent we do. But by and large, we do this off-cycle. We do this when we're not actually assessing the claim. We use that sort of model and bits of deductive reasoning and evidence to build up our gut. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the visceral response, because that's how we live our lives. You don't have time back in the ancient world to figure, oh, is that really a face, in the forest there? Or should I just run? And those that ran won. But this analogy extends everywhere. We don't have the cycles to actually dig in and process everything. We would never get anything done. So the deductive process is about training our gut so that our reactions are better. And the better you train it, the better you are. And the worse you train it, the worse you are. And that's one of the problems with religion. When I left, by the way, how much time do I have left? Because I started mine late. Or how much have I used, or what time is it? Cool. When I left religion, I spent a lot of time, as a matter of fact, it's ongoing, rethinking everything that I believed, reevaluating every position I had on everything, because if the pastor or the Bible or God or my personal relationship with Jesus Christ was my justification for why, my position on abortion, gay rights, whatever, what's my position now, and what's the justification for it? That is a truckload of work. I think it's one of the reasons why people stay in religion, because they're offered, I think Sean Faircloth called it the comfort of the illusion of certainty, and easy answers. You have to do that work. And the thing that I'm talking about is the reason why this is important. The assumptions that you make can also be called premises. The premises of another argument. Everything you believe informs potentially every other thing you believe. It's why I've said so often that I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. You have to include both. You have to try to eliminate the false things. The thing that I'm trying to encourage people to do is to examine themselves and eliminate as many of the assumptions that they find that are false as possible. Not every assumption that you have, by the way, is false. There are plenty of safe ones. I think it's in a general way, I'd say it's relatively safe that most of the people in this room are atheistic. I haven't asked all of you. Some of you I know, but this process is difficult, and it's one that I don't think people do. I think even after coming out of religion, some people kind of toss up their hands, which is why you see them grasping at various other forms of woo and superstition. And I'd love to tell you a really easy mechanism to make this work, but I can't. If it was easy, I wouldn't have had to do a talk on it. We'd just say, hey, do this. The things that helped me, if I wasn't able to spot an assumption that I was making, the first thing is to recognize that this is true, that we make assumptions, that we need to correct the false ones. The second step is if you can't spot the assumptions that you're making, spot other people's. It's okay if you're spotting the ones that you already disagree with. That's a good start, because it trains you to look for, what is this person presupposing in this argument? What is their position? It also aids in communication with individuals that you really disagree with. The assumptions we make, the baggage we bring in, are roadblocks to good communication and building communities, and that's the most important thing we have to do. Our job, if we have a job, when I do the show, I'm not all about converting people or deconverting people. Although I'm happy to do it, and I make no apologies about being a proselytizing evangelical atheist. Happy to remove the delusions of religion from the mind of every person I ever encounter. But it's not my primary goal. It's really not. My primary goal is to get information out and to encourage and build a better community. If you're having problems spotting the assumptions you're making, try to spot them in somebody else. And if you disagree with them, then ask yourself, why do I disagree with that? And am I actually guilty of making the opposite assumption? And is it justified? You may find that it is. You may find that it's not. Lastly, and I kind of talked about this earlier, I'm going to give you, well, I mentioned that the importance of this is that the immediate reliance that, for example, a pastor or a Bible is trustworthy obviously leads to harm. We have those same potential harms all over the place, not just in religion. And I said I couldn't give you an easy way to kill off those assumptions. I can't across the board, but I can give you an easy way to kill off those assumptions in the interpersonal relationships, in the communications that you're engaged in order to build communities. Anybody have a guess at what the one simple thing you can do is to kill off your assumptions in interpersonal relationships? Ask. Talk to people and ask them. Ask them what their view is. Ask them what their life's like. Instead of just assuming you're like me, go out and find out who they actually are. You may find out you want to hang out with them. You may find out they're an asshole. I don't want anything to do with you. That's fine. But if the goal is to actually build a better community, that's my goal, how can you not take the simple step of just asking? Nothing will kill off your assumptions about a person faster than asking. And you may find that your assumption was correct, in which case you've trained your gut a little bit better. Thanks.
Thank you.